Wooden face. Fine face. Wooden face. Fine face. And it gets your face like warmed up.
Super serious.
Where nothing fun or funny ever happens.
This is a super serious thing.
I don't even like dogs.
Boom.
Super serious.
Boom. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Super Serious Dog Podcast. I'm Misha. That's Courtney, wherever she is on the screen. And
I'm here. I'm right here.
Together, we make the Wonder Twins, and our powers activate when we go like this. No, I'm just kidding. For those of you who are listening, I just bumped my fists together like Wonder Twins. Did you ever watch that?
Are the Wonder Twins a real thing?
Uh-huh. Wonder Twin powers activate. It was like a Justice League thing.
I don't remember the Wonder Twins. I remember like a group. There's like a group with our powers combined, you know?
Yes. So that's Captain Planet.
Captain Planet. There you go.
Which that also, there's a lot of powers combining things. I mean, when you think about it.
I think the moral of the story is you need others.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
We are social creatures. We must work together.
So one of the things, as you guys can probably tell, we don't have a guest today, which is really bizarre, honestly, even though we started out without guests. But it's kind of funny. Like now we're back to
just us,
just the two of us. So hope you guys are ready for that. It's been really exciting though. Like the fact that so many people are like willing to be on the show and want to talk to us and be on our rinky dink little podcast. That
this was a joke, by the way, guys. Like we started this podcast as a joke. Yeah. We didn't think anyone was going to listen. It was just going to be me and Misha, like basically having video calls with each other. And we were going to put them on the internet just to be like, nobody watched. We did it. So the fact that so many of y'all have watched and listened and whatever, we do really appreciate it. And yeah, like we always say, feel free to leave us a review and be specific. So we know why you're watching or listening or whatever.
Yeah. So we'll do more of that and less of the other crap.
Yeah.
One of the things that we wanted to talk about for realsies, though, not just waffle on forever, is socialization and like not just, I'm not talking about like puppy socialization, but like dog social, dog park, doggy daycare, play group type sort of stuff.
Yeah. And I think with that, we have to, as we always like to do, bring definitions into it and like what is social and what is pro-social and what is anti-social. And those are things to keep in mind. Yeah. And I think, you know, it depends on who you ask sometimes because everybody has their different backgrounds of knowledge. I had not heard of the term pro-social until I met Nelson, which was like, 7 years ago. So
not her dog. Her dog is named after the person, Nelson.
Yes. Nelson Hodges. Nelson Hodges. Google it. So he described pro-social, and that was something I hadn't heard of before because I had just heard of, being social, and that's what you should be, is just be social. But being social sometimes involves being rude, technically. And you're very pushy and you're very, the center of attention, the life of the party. And that can come across as rude to, some recipients of your social nature, whether you're a human or not. But being pro-social is adapting to the environment, doing what's best for the pack of, even if it's a temporary pack that you're with, just what's best for the group. So I've actually described my dog Nelson as being pro-social before, and that has its faults as well, which I've had with Nelson, where he follows the leader and he's like, yeah, we're doing this. I'm a part of it because that's what is best for everyone, is strength in numbers.
Which is interesting to consider because that's not the same thing as being the alpha necessarily, right? Like, so every dog pack is going to have hierarchies to them, right? And as Chad mentioned in one of our previous episodes, it's kind of more familial. So like roles can change. It's a little bit more fluid. It's not as like set in stone, but it's just kind of a general progression. But social skills don't really have anything. I mean, not to say they don't have anything. That's not right to say, but it's not as woven into that because you could be the alpha and still go play with the beta or whatever, right? That doesn't have anything to do with it. It's more about play style at that point.
Right.
So
yeah, just to clarify, the alpha is not the asshole. That's
right.
not the asshole of the group. The asshole of the group is honestly usually a social dog who is jumping on everybody, getting in their face, overreacting when something doesn't go its way. And some people might, call their dog antisocial when it's actually just an overreactor. An antisocial dog would rather, be by itself all the time. It doesn't mean it's aggressive about wanting to be by itself. It doesn't mean it takes it to a fight situation. It just means that it's more likely to walk off.
Yeah.
And not be a part of it.
I think Rocky would be, I don't know if he'd be anti or asocial, but he doesn't like going to parties, right? A dog park or a playgroup type situation, he just sits at the gate and wants to leave. He doesn't want any part of that. Large field social, he just treks around the edge and kind of hangs out near the gate. And then eventually he goes and poops and he feels a little bit better. And then he goes off and he plays. But it takes him a while to muster up that courage, and it's not really his thing, right? I love going to parties. So this whole pandemic thing is rough for me. But Courtney doesn't love going to parties. Maybe if it's one of her good friends or something like that, she'll find the strength within her to go poop in the middle of the field and start playing with everybody.
That's exactly what I do at parties.
just party trick, right? So Rocky would be definitely one of those dogs. And he's not aggressive. I mean, he can make some nasty sounds, but in fact, he could actually take a lot. Xena and Zeus have been kind of beating up on him a little bit.
Yeah, Xena and Zeus are very social dogs.
Yes.
Very social, because they interject themselves into any interaction possible. And they don't always do it in the most polite way.
Yeah, certainly not Zeus. Zeus is a good example of a dog who's too social, in the sense that he tackles everybody and just assumes everybody's going to be fine with it. And he doesn't really adapt. He doesn't read the room. Whereas Xena will look she'll go and spaz up to somebody. And then when nobody's responding to her, she looks around. She's like, oh, we're being cool right now. We're just keeping it chill. Okay. All right. I'm going to throw out some play battles. No. Okay. I guess I'll just go lay down over here. Whereas Zeus is just play with me, play with me, play with me. So I think this kind of segues nicely into understanding your dog's play style and how they introduce themselves to dogs, because that makes a really, really big difference. Zeus is not the type of dog that I would just let my Chihuahua meet, because they'd end up with holes. Somebody would end up with holes in them.
Right.
And so he's definitely more of we're going to go on a lot of pack walks, and we're going to do a lot of tethered decompression, and we're going to do training sessions in front of each other. And we're going to do all this stuff to make sure that you see that everything's under control, because B-Town doesn't like that chaos at all.
Yeah. And that time that you're talking about, that pack walk, that tethered decompression time, allows the other dogs to look at each other and get to know each other and get to know how the other dog moves and what I can trust and what I can't trust in that dog.
Right.
So that's how a relationship is built. A relationship is not built nose to nose. That's not how dogs build relationships. I mean, there is a relationship being built right there, but it's not generally a good one.
Do you remember last week when we went hiking? I think it was last week when we were at Walnut Creek Park, and I had Xena with me, and there was that lady that was like, oh, my dog just makes a lot of noise. She's just really vocal when she plays. But she was old and stiff. And at first it was just I make noise, but also Xena's an idiot puppy who just bounced right up to her. And then she started blocking the space. The dog did. Mm-hmm. The other dog started blocking the path and wouldn't let Xena pass. So she was like, oh, and then the lady's like, she's friendly. And I'm like, you should really stop just spitting words out and really look at what's happening in front of you, because that's probably true. I've had tons of dogs who make horrific demon, I'm going to murder you noises, and then they're fine. And it's just that they just make those noises. They're not actually trying to accomplish anything by making those noises. It's just kind of a visceral response, and overexcitement probably. And, just never cause a problem. But that lady, if she would just stop and go, huh, it's interesting. But instead she gets stuck on this narrative, right? And we all do it too, right? Like you've done it probably with your own dogs who are actually very well socialized and like making friends with dogs. Not Reddy so much, but like you also know their type too.
Yeah, Reddy
right?
makes sometimes Reddy can make an amazing friend with dogs, but I also know which dogs he's not going to make friends with, and I don't
Not
put him in
Zeus.
those situations. Because that's like, why would I force my dog into an interaction they don't enjoy?
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
Yep. So even if you know something, even if you know your dog really, really well, like take a minute and just watch and don't have like, let me see if he's going to do the thing. Just observe and see if you notice anything. And if you were to put it in, if you were to pretend that these dogs weren't yours or pretend that they're humans, how would you interpret their behavior if you were just like looking out the window, bored at a bus stop or something like that, right? And you just saw this interaction between two beings, because a lot of times you'll gather a lot more information, and sometimes people tend to think like their dog at the dog park chasing all the other dogs is having so much fun, and he's instigating play because the other dogs run with them. But if you really like kind of peel back the layers, like those dogs are trying to get away from that dog, right? So if
your dog's probably being a bully,
your dog's probably being, and not even necessarily a bully, right? That could be a part of bullying, right? Of just following and pestering. Like, hey, come on, nerd, play with me. Why aren't you playing with me, nerd?
right? Right.
But it could just be like they're just bad at reading certain signals, so you should step in and intervene and say like, "Hey, come here, puppy. Why don't you back off a little bit?" Right?
Right.
It's really important, especially if you know what type of dog your dog is. Like, right? They really like to push. Let's say they have a pushy play style, right? Then you know, like, okay, soft dogs who immediately go right off the bat and like shrink and try to get away and tuck their tail and run behind their owners. Like you need to do more work calling your dog away from that dog, for instance.
Reddy
right?
is a great example of that. He is a very forward, very pushy player. And so he isn't allowed to play with dogs that are too soft, too likely to, scream, tuck their tail, run away. And then he also doesn't play with dogs that are too pushy of players back because they're matched. And play, just to define play real quick, is a suspension of rules. That's what it is. It's a practice in fighting where rules are suspended. Right. So these two dogs have to trust each other enough to say, hey, we're going to pretend like we're killing each other, okay? But we're not going to hurt each other. Because when you see two dogs that really trust each other playing, and the way they grab each other and this body slam and tackle and like bitey face game, I mean, their teeth are right by their eyeballs and they're not hurting each other. Dogs have incredible body awareness and, the ability to read movements in a microsecond. So, one dog moves their face a little bit this way, the other one matches, and they can have that really fast kind of play. But they have to trust each other. So if, Reddy is a, player that plays usually at like an 8, 9, or a 10, like those are his levels where he plays. He doesn't play down below that. So if I know the other dog is also probably up there, they're not going to get to play right away. They're going to do more of like what you just mentioned a bit earlier, is those pack walks together, that tethered decompression. And then when I do introduce them, I'm going to do it when they're in a calm state of mind. And I'm going to let them kind of move around each other and not jump right into that play. And even when they do, I'm going to enforce breaks because I want to make sure they're taking them, because any play can get out of hand if they're not taking breaks.
Yep. And if you've ever heard a dog trainer say this, or that dog trainer said this to you, just being an average dog person, right? A lot of dog trainers don't like dog parks because, number one, they're not regulated. Number two, most of the time people just go there, let their dog off leash and put their nose right into their phone and they stop paying attention. Right. So
therefore they're not enforcing breaks.
Not enforcing breaks. They're not enforcing rules. They're not making sure that their dog's not pestering somebody. But the other reason too is I think there's a huge lack of information on what appropriate socializing looks like. Right. And I think a big part of that has to do with daycares, because you see footage, right? There's a lot of daycares that have like, cameras and stuff like that. And, they have like promo videos and that sort of thing. And it's just like play, chaos and running around, but that's just a snippet and that's just one piece of it, right? And not all daycares are like that. There's tons of daycares that treat their social time more like a cocktail party where no one's jumping, no one's running, especially if they have an indoor only space, because that kind of stuff could escalate very quickly, especially if you have 30 dogs in a small area, right? Certainly no humping, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but like usually
very rarely do I let more than 2 dogs play together.
Yep.
Even when there's a lot of dogs in the yard, I usually don't let more than 2 kind of team up.
Yep. A lot of times what happens, and the reasoning for that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Courtney, but is like, so 2's a party, 3's a crowd, right? So if you have a third person coming in or a third dog coming in and like taking cheap shots, or at least perceived cheap shots, maybe they're not, but like that could get really overwhelming for the dog. And on top of that, it really skews the energy and the interaction, right? Like if you and I are having a conversation and someone just butts in, both of us are going to be like, yeah, okay. Anyways. And then that can also cause resentment if that's happening to that third wheel dog. Right. And that's not to say that like dogs should never, ever, ever play. Right. This isn't about absolutes. Right. You can have a trio of dogs who play well, but I think most people who have a multi-dog household have seen it's pretty rare that all 3 or all 5 or all 4 dogs are all playing together at the same time. It's usually they'll partner up. Yeah. Or one goes and chews a stick and 2 run off and play.
Right. And I can speak from my own experience having 5 dogs. And honestly, like most dog trainers, I experiment with my own dogs, right? So I do let more than just 2 of my own dogs play together, as long as there's not client dogs around or, there's not risk of anything. I'll let my dogs get amped up together because I want to know what happens. I want to, if something happens to my dogs, that's my responsibility. But I want to see how far does their trust go. But you
also wouldn't do that on like day one of bringing this a new dog into your house.
Absolutely not. These dogs
a lot of time.
These dogs have lived together for years, and we've done a lot of trust building together, and they do very much enjoy each other's company. So when they play, I trust they have suspended the rules, and I want to see what their games are. And what I have seen is that eventually someone is not having fun. It's usually Phoebe. Because everyone gangs up on her is usually what happens. Well, yeah, I mean, she's an instigator like crazy, right? And so it makes sense that she's the one that gets targeted, but it doesn't start off as her being targeted. It actually usually starts off as 2 dogs are playing and Phoebe inserts herself in the game, and then somewhere in the mix they kind of turn on her and they all start chasing her, and she's having fun for a little bit. And then all of a sudden she's like, okay, that's kind of a lot. And she'll go and like put herself in a corner and be like, back off. And in a very friendly, but serious kind of way of like, okay, guys, seriously, like stop chasing me now, Right. And I'm always there to monitor, and I'm like, okay. And I call the other dogs off and I make sure she gets her space. And, because that's what I feel is the right thing to do in that moment. If you're listening and you think I should do something different, I would love to hear your thoughts on it, just because I love talking about socialization. And I love just, dissecting that doggy brain, and especially in a pack that I've put together, not a random pack or whatever. Right. So yeah, that's what I have seen when it does get escalated. The other times I've seen multiple dogs play is usually in a dog park, and it usually doesn't go well.
Yep. Somebody has to get wrangled out or something. And sometimes like there's a natural ebb and flow, right? Like, so, people get off work and they want to go let their dog run around and go socialize and whatever. And that's not to say that like you can't have a stable pack at a dog park, right? Like certainly at apartment complexes is a good example. Like a lot of my clients who live in apartments, I'm much less opposed to dog parks there because it's a community. And there's nobody from the street just coming in, and there's regulars that go there all the time. So you are forming a temporary pack when you see those regulars, right? So that helps a lot when there is stability and there are people, because they'll start governing themselves in a way. But also when there's one new kid and there's 5 established dogs, it's not there's a lot more trust already built into that. And so the new kid is a lot easier to assess because you're getting all these different insights, right? And if one dog plays better with that dog, then great. Now that you know, it doesn't have to be a whole thing. But whenever it's like all 6 dogs are brand new, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of things can just kind of go haywire. So that's something you have to really consider. And if you don't really know what your dog's play style is, like, hire a trainer and ask, or, you know, start talking to other dog owners. Because a lot of times they may not have the vernacular and the nomenclature, right? But they'll at least know, like, oh yeah, my dog always does this. And you're like, oh, well, my dog never does that. So my dog doesn't do that. So that's an indicator of play style of like, cool, if I see a dog doing that, they probably don't like it. If I see a dog doing that to my dog, right?
Right.
But just pay attention, right? If your dog's running away from another dog, like, do they look happy and are they reciprocating? Because that's another big factor. There's tons of dogs who love to chase and be chased and all that kind of stuff. But
you'll see the balance. You'll see it reciprocated. I chase you for a little bit, then you chase me for a little bit. So with that, every time I bring up reciprocated play to like a client or something, the first thing they ask me about is that one time at the dog park, they watched 2 dogs go back and forth humping each other. What do you say to that, Misha?
I'll say it's rude. I mean, it's one of those things, like, clearly the dogs are into it because they're both humpers and whatever. There's definitely a lot of misconceptions about, like, oh, it's dominance. And I'm like, it's also just play. And it's
rude play, but it's play.
It's
a suspension of rules. We're practicing something else. But I mean, it's not even sexual like that. It's
right.
It's just a learned behavior that has become a habit, and they've perceived it as play. I don't encourage it. I encourage people to discourage it. Right. Just because if
they do it to the wrong dog.
If that is that dog's habit of how to play, and they do that to one of my dogs or another dog that really doesn't like it, like, it's not going to go well, and they're going to get corrected by that dog. So I would prefer that the human just step in and deter it every time, instead of them getting that lesson from the wrong dog.
Back and forth.
Instead of humping back and forth. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of one of those things, like B-Town. My Chihuahua humps my pit bull. Like, and that's not something that always happened. And it's usually after they've played. And like, you know, I'm not going to say that there's no, you know, meaning behind it in terms of like, oh, they're just doing it just because, right? Like, there's a reason B-Town's doing it. He's like, yeah, you're my bitch. Yeah. You know what I mean? But like, Rocky doesn't give a shit. And like, I used to like yell at B-Town constantly to get off of him. And like, then eventually I was like, you know what, Rocky, you should stand up for yourself. And he did. And it handled itself. So like, you know, if Rocky's willing to accept it, he's willing to accept it. But it's also within my own household. And I know that doesn't lead to a dangerous situation. And Rocky's just sitting there with his tongue out, just like panting, like, what? Why are you looking at me? And I'm like, because your little brother is on your rear, you idiot. Like, but that's my own particular dynamic, right? And there's probably some dog trainer who would hear me say that and be like, oh, you should never do that.
You are the worst dog trainer ever. But you know what? There's also a dog trainer. I've seen the video. Her dog humps her leg and she lets it and encourages it and lets him finish.
So it's like, it's doing it to accomplish a goal.
Yeah. And she's a trainer, and she says that that's how you deal with humping. You just let them.
Yeah. I mean,
there's all kinds of schools of thought out there. So if you don't like Misha's, go fuck yourself.
Thanks for having my back, Courtney. I appreciate it. I did want to go ahead and mention, though, like, one of my, like, the first places I learned about dog socialization and play styles and all that kind of stuff was through Dogs Playing for Life. It's a really cool organization. It's Amy Sadler is the one who spearheaded it, and she basically wanted to bring socialization into shelters where dogs are super stressed out, and a lot of times it has turned dogs who like wouldn't have had a good outcome and would have been euthanized into adoptable dogs because they release endorphins and all the happy stuff starts flowing through their brain. But also, can you imagine if like you were in prison and everybody was just yelling at each other the whole time and just screaming at the top of their lungs, not even necessarily hurling insults, just literally crazy screaming. And that was your life all day, every day. Like, you would hate all of the inmates around you, right? But being able to go out and socialize and work out and run around and forget for 10 seconds that you're stuck in prison can provide a lot. So if you look them up, they're a really cool organization. They work in shelters all across the country now. I'm pretty sure they've traveled across the world and done seminars and all kinds of stuff. And they have like information on their website. So if you want to look at different play styles and figure out, okay, well, which one of these are suit my dogs or might be close to what my dogs do. There's a whole like infographic thing on there.
I also think that Dogs Playing for Life thing is really great. When I first heard about it, I was really excited because, yeah, like you said, like when you live in a prison and everyone's just screaming all the time, like, of course you're going to hate everyone around you. And we've talked about before how a lot of times reactivity is just frustration. It's frustration that's got to go somewhere. It does not mean the dog is aggressive. So like, when they're trying to get that dog from point A to point B and they have to walk it past another dog and it's, lunging and snapping and doing its best because it's frustrated. It's trying to communicate that,
Yep.
It may love playing with other dogs, but it looks fucking aggressive right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can't exactly just pair that dog up with another dog or somebody with a little tiny Chihuahua wants to adopt it. And you're like, I mean, he's pretty nasty walking by other kennels. I don't know if we can give him that chance.
Right.
But having that Dogs Playing for Life, it's like, okay, yeah, he's kind of nasty walking by the other kennels, but when you get him in a yard with a dog and you make sure he's properly introduced, like he is a goober. He is a total goober. He flips over on his back and he lets, that dog lick him all in the face. He loves little dogs,
Right.
And they get to really learn those things about the dogs. And I just think it's so wonderful.
Yeah. It's really funny. I've met Amy Sadler like several times now because I met her when I used to work at Awesome Pets Alive, right? I met her several times and now I've had the opportunity to meet her twice at conference. And both times I fangirled so hard and I was so awkward and she was so nice to me. And she was just like, oh, have we met before? And I was like, no, I don't know. And of course I'd met her before. Right. Sat in some of her freaking play groups for Christ's sake. And her sons help her out with her business and stuff too. And they're super dog savvy, but yeah, it's hilarious. So like, oh yeah, I can talk to Pat and Glenn and Chad. And like, meanwhile, my client's like fainting for me when I told her like, hey, we had these guys on the podcast. And she's like, oh my God, a shout out for you, Rachel.
Nice.
But yeah, she's just like this like force for me.
Hey, we all have those people,
I know, right?
It's awesome. Maybe we'll get her on the show.
Yeah, maybe. That'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah, Dogs Playing for Life. Y'all check it out.
Yeah.
It's great stuff.
So Courtney, what are some other things that you've seen in dog
life?
Parks and dog socials? Yes, in life. Just no, and like social situations for dogs and stuff that like people should be aware of.
I mean, I think people should be aware that a lot of trust can be built between you and your dog and having it in an appropriate social situation. So, pack walks, things like that are really, really beneficial for dogs to go and coexist around another. I don't even want to keep talking. I want to know what you thought of. What?
No, I was just going to say, like how you approach those social situations is also really, really important too. You got me thinking on that. So
you mean like literally how you approach, like from car to social situation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Literally how you approach.
Yeah.
If it takes you 30,
very important.
If it takes you 30 extra minutes to walk from your apartment gate to the gate of the dog park, and so be it. Take your time. That tired dog is going to be a much better socializer too, because it's not exploding at the seams at all the other dogs. Yeah, I mean, well,
I touched on that a little bit with talking about Reddy and how I know that he comes into play. He wants to come into play at like 8, 7, maybe a 7 at the lowest. But if on a scale of 1 to 10, like he's up there in the high numbers because he's a high energy border collie, and if he's going to play, like that's how he wants to do it. So it's important that I don't start him off in play like that, Right. Because if 2 dogs meet at a 10, like something's going to go wrong. There's no trust there. Those dogs don't know each other. Mm-hmm. Even dogs that know each other coming in at a 10, like that's
how bar fights start.
That's how bar fights start. Yeah.
It's a bunch of people at a 10 because they're drunk and they're feeling good. Someone bumps into them and the other person doesn't back down, and voila, now you have a bouncer kicking people out.
Right.
Oh, I miss bars.
Oh, bars. Bars. And when you needed bouncers to throw people out. Those were good old days way back in 2019.
I don't even like necessarily miss bars, right? It's not like
No,
I was
me
going
neither.
to bars all the time. I just miss having the option to go to them.
No, but I knew it was there. I knew it was there and it was going on. And I didn't want to go, but I knew people were going. And I was proud of those people.
Your introversion is showing, Courtney.
Damn.
What else were you going to say? Because you were talking about doing the pack walks and like starting how you start the social and stuff like that. I feel like you had more to say on proper socialing.
Oh, probably. Yeah. I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel here, right? Just like with people, right? If you're thrown in and expect to tell your deepest, darkest secret to someone, like you're going to not want to do that. It's going to be uncomfortable, right? But if you get to kind of like read each other's body language, do some small talk, where are you from? What do you do? What kind of music do you like? What kind of food do you like? You can start to like build that trust. And then you can be like, oh, you went to school there? Did you know about that one girl? And like, then you can get into some other like deeper details of stuff and you can really start to connect. And, before you know it, you're, I don't know, whatever people do that they think is fun together. But yeah, so that's kind of how dog relationships need to build as well. And each dog is going to have different speeds at which they're capable of doing that. And that has to do with like, them being pro-social, social, asocial, antisocial, all that stuff.
Yep.
Is their desire to do that. Like,
right.
The drive, the pack drive.
Yeah.
That makes them want to interact with other dogs. Which is it's kind of like a person who doesn't enjoy small talk. Well, then it's going to be hard for you to get to know people. Because
you gotta have that small talk to
get through that awkward small talk to build that little trust foundation, to open up those lines of communication, to go, oh, we're actually not that different. Because I also like pizza and smashing pumpkins. So cool. Like let's hang out. And like, I don't really play video games, but like I like that you do, and like. You get to like just build that like comfort and relatability with someone. And so then you feel more comfortable doing things like suspending the rules and playing, or even something as simple as taking a nap near the other one. Like you talked about, how daycares and stuff kind of present this image of like play, go, go, go all the time, when really coexisting is more of what dogs want to do with each other. Playing is, like I said, you got to suspend the rules and you got to practice fighting. That takes a lot of work. A lot of pet dogs are pretty lazy and want to just hang out. So if we can just like be with each other, I can look at the squirrels in the tree or listen to the noise or smell that, barbecue down the street. And it's really cool to watch like a row of dogs hang out. Because when, a bird flies over, all of their heads move together.
Yeah.
Or like they smell something and everybody's nose moves the same direction. And that's dogs that are like having small talk, right?
Yeah,
Drinking beers, just
smell that?
shooting the shit, like taking in the day. And those are dogs that are really getting comfortable with each other, really building that trust. And then for one to like lay down, fall asleep, that's trust. That's comfort. That's a socialized dog.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I strive for, is dogs that'll just relax together. Playing is cool, but I like relaxing more.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You're not the type to go to a kegger.
No,
So
I'm not.
You know what makes me really uncomfortable, and this is the last thing I want to talk about before we wrap up, but
This is it. Last thing.
When people I'm cutting you off, Courtney. No, when people get a new dog and they immediately start taking it places and they immediately take it to the dog park and they immediately go to PetSmart and get the name tag and stuff. And I'm just like, you don't know your dog at all yet. Like, why don't you spend a little bit of time getting to know them before you go take them places? And like, I get that most people, they luck out, right? And it's fine and nothing bad happens. But I've seen that backfire a lot. I had a client call me last year now. And they were like, we're taking things really slowly. We've had basically in the first 2 weeks of owning this dog, we've had people come over like every day or every other day. Just close friends, only our most dog savvy people. And I was like, that is not taking it slow, especially for this dog who like clearly started getting more and more defensive and territorial and that kind of stuff. Apparently that was, part of her nature, but it's like, you don't have to go that fast. Like when dog trainers tell you to go slow, we mean slow.
Yeah. So there's the
Very
3
slow.
3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. And maybe that's the thing, we can just wrap up with that. But that's kind of how long it's going to take a dog to get comfortable in a new place. And there's different stages of that comfort.
Right.
3 days
Right.
is a different stage than the 3 weeks, and that's a different stage than the 3 months. But what often gets forgotten is each time something changes in that environment, the clock gets reset. So if you get a dog and then on the 3rd day you have it, your sister comes to stay with you. You've just started that clock over. And she brings a dog. You just started that clock over. So now those 3 days are the dog's like, okay, who's in charge? What's going on?
Right.
What are the rules? And that's all the dog's trying to figure out. Who's in charge? What are the rules? What's going on? Where do I fit into this? How am I going to be safe here? Where do I survive here? So that is for all the people that brought dogs into their home recently. Think about what the first 3 days, 3 weeks, and 3 months have been like for your dog, and how many times has that clock reset, and where are you in your relationship and your socialization? And if you're kind of worried about that answer, call a dog trainer. We can probably help. We can probably help you.
We should have a ticker for how many times we say call a dog trainer.
It would be a very high number.
Right.
Because, a lot of things depend. And like we've talked about, it's not always safe for us to give out like just generalized information or generalized advice. Because if it's taken the wrong way with the wrong dog, someone can end up really hurt. So when in doubt, just call a dog trainer. Most of us do free consultations. And we can tell you if we can help you or not.
Yep. So on that note, if you guys have questions, you know where to email them. Super Serious Dog
Podcast.
At
same time at Gmail.
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 You can also check out our Patreon where we have extra content. So if you like some of our interviews, there's longer continuations of those interviews on there.
Like a whole extra hour that you didn't hear, like a whole other conversation that goes on for an hour.
Yes, just
exactly. For $1, $1 a month, and you can get weekly extra hour long episodes.
Yeah, that's right. And if you like us and you want to share, with your friends and family, definitely do that. You can also write a review and wherever you listen to your podcast, whether that's iTunes or, well, I guess not Spotify. We're not on Spotify yet. Still working on that. Spotify has rigid, anyways. Be specific about what you liked about our show. Is it us? Is it the guests? Is it a story we told? Is it dog farts? I don't know.
We can get more of those if you'd like.
Just have jars of dog farts. That could be like our merch.
Yes, that's what I have off camera over here is jars of dog farts.
All right, that's it. We're done. Bye, everybody. I don't know what our outro music sounds like.